So we had an annual meeting on November 18th of 2023. We had Lynn Nelson, Mitch Inman, Mike Rawls, Jack, the board members here. We had a quorum. Jack Bailey, Mike Hawkins, were absent. Cindy Nelson was present, and Pat Rasco. Members present: Rusty Rasco, Ann Inman, Amy Lard, Greg Nash, Chrissy Betts, and Casey Chitwood was officiating the counting of the ballots. We opened the meeting at 10:15. Mitch led that. We had a quorum for taking care of business. New neighbors, we've got Michael and Jennifer Staggard on the northwest corner have moved in. Matt Sturgis and Sophia Erickson purchased a lot next to Mike Hawkins. The secretary report was the minutes from June the 14th was read. Lynn moved and approved, and Mitch seconded the minutes, and it passed. Treasury report, Cindy read the details for the third quarter and year to date. Mitch moved to approve report, and Mike Rawls second. Motion passed. The architectural review report, the only activity we had at that point were changes going out to Stagger Home. They've enclosed some property for their horses and stuff down there on that, which has been approved so far. Old business, we talked about fire ant extinguished, granules, orange oil concentrate treatments are ongoing, but you have to have dry days to apply and have it work. I've got a list of to address as soon as that happens, and simply said, I think extinguish is either becoming immune, the answer becoming immune to it or adapting to it, but I have an alternate, and we'll talk about that in our regular meeting. HOA storage maintenance facility location and design, proposed enclosed water well pressure tank with storage for moving equipment, and we've got a lot of that information on that to cover today. Runway taxiway maintenance, we had put 410 yards of sand applied so far, more is needed. We're working on the plans on the runway watering system. There'll be more about that, talking about during this meeting. The runway maintenance committee, Rusty Rasco, Mike Rawls, John Burton, handling the runway watering. I'd like to thank them for that, keeping the water reel and tank in order. The HOA social committee was not operating at that time, and that appears to be starting up again. Monthly services and expenses, annual service will be done in off season. And water sprinkler maintenance, there were repairs, new parts were installed this fall. Culvert cleanup responsibility allowed on our HOA continued for drainage concern. Northwest taxiway, north runway dirt work still needed and in process of working. We had some delinquent HOA dues in the covenants. We're still working on that. We did refresh what the deed restrictions say upon that first payment is due on January 1st of each calendar year. Consider delayed if not received by February the 15th, at which time interest rate of 18% will be applied to delinquent amount. Payment options are available first of the year, monthly, quarterly. The chairman, we sent out information to everybody to be notified as soon as possible. There was a motion made that this be implemented on January the 1st, 2024. The board, Mitch moved and Mike seconded, and the motion passed. Mailboxes on Ponderosa, the road is the taxiway. We're going to address that some more today. Mailboxes need to be in line with the property pins for clearance. There's more on that. Feral hog control is ongoing, depending on where they're at. South End runway vegetable garden needs quotes for improving. Some work has been done on that. Webmaster approaching him to send out blast with general info and sign in steps so everybody understands how to get onto the website. New business runway access at the south end. Fence portion has been removed. Additional work needed. West water well maintenance, pressure tank tests, and paint's complete. The election results of the new board: Lynn Nelson, President; Mitch Inman, Vice President; Cindy Nelson, Treasurer; Pat Rasco, Secretary; Directors Jay Adams, Eric Kurzog, Mike Rawls. And the closing of the meeting at 10:42. Anybody have any questions or discussion on that? Entertain a motion that these minutes be approved.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, yeah.
Motion's been advanced, and
There you go.
Yeah, whatever.
I'll second. And Mitch seconded. All in favor, say aye. Minutes have been approved. Financial report. Well, my wife is busy with multiple things this morning, so therefore I'm going to read So just an update on dues payments. I think the letter was well received. So far, 25 have paid something, 14 yet to pay, and 17 of those have been paid in full. As of yesterday, this is actually December the 31st, so end of the year. Our beginning balance was $64,783. Income with dues $23.35. We had expenses: water $147, electricity $333, labor $27.25, fuel $252, parts came in at $908. Breaking down on that, were sprinkler parts $887, well parts $9, and mower hoses $11. Property taxes $30.08. Maintenance oil for the mower was $8. Miscellaneous. We had ballot verification postage stamps that came to $130, and ballot envelopes and paper was $11.80, and materials fire ant bait came in at $11.12. So the ending balance as of December the 31st was $61,480. And the current up-to-date balance, we've received $24,671 in dues. Expenses so far have been $235.32. That contains water $49, electricity $28, miscellaneous $113, library room rental, and photocopies for the plat. And our current balance in the bank is $85,895.85. Any questions or concerns with that? I'd entertain a motion for approval of the financial report.
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion passed. So, old business, annual dues payment schedules. We've got the schedule out to everybody. I think everybody's aware of delinquent dues. We're in the process of informing people of some delinquent dues. If there's some contention on that, we've got a couple issues that we're going to end up having to send some letters out to some folks that still owe some delinquent dues. The process is laid out in the deed restrictions of where that goes forward. And the good thing is that the Texas law now for small claims court is up to $18,000. So there's several different avenues to recover those monies. And it's simply a matter, if you're delinquent, we're going to file paperwork. And if you want to have a meeting or somebody wants to contest that, they can have an executive session with the board. Based off of that results, it'll be filed with the county and go to small claims court. That's the simple. That bypasses a lot of legal expenses and everything else for us. That one's pretty cut and dry. Maintenance, storage, enclosure, design, and install. I'm going to let Jay Adams talk about that and what he's come up with so far as expenses, cost, and installation that we would like to proceed forward with that.
Okay, I think we've got a spot for it. We did a temporary layout on it up there by the water tank. This building will enclose the water tank in a horizontal or a vertical and a horizontal position at the peak of the ridge. The building will be 32 feet by 26 feet. Now, this is a preliminary drawing that, do you guys have one of them?
No, I don't. Need to.
So you can follow along a little bit. We got an extra one here. Now, this can be modified however we decide to do it, but it's something for us to start on, and I think it's a pretty good one. So you can see the dimensions on it. You can see the price quote that we have, that's without gutters, and it's with an option to have two types of doors put on it. We can either have two 10-foot doors with a 3-foot, 3-0 personnel door, or we can have two roll-up doors. I think it affords us more room if we just put the two 10-foot doors on there. In the back of the package, there's an option for weld-up bearing hinges that we can put on there. Several of them, they're not expensive at all. There's another option. They're greasable here, with trim packages on there that we can apply to those two 10-foot doors. And we have a color chart list that we can pick the colors for the metal that goes on the building. Right now, it's kind of a beige color, which is something that we had to do at the time with a galvanized roof. So we can pick any colors we want to pick on there from the color chart that the president has. The doors are $1,500, or roughly, by the time you get done, $1,428 for the door. The roll-up doors are a bit more expensive, and the other option for the building wound up being a couple of feet, about 1.5 feet wider, and it made the building $4,500, $5,000 more. So we have those options. You have the option for the large building over there, that wound up being what, 17 and some change?
I think so.
My printer ran out of ink yesterday, so I was unable to print out those copies for everybody, but if you want to pass it around, let everybody look at that.
Jay, which way do these doors go? They swing out, like sideways?
They'll swing out, they'll have pins with the center that you can lock them, and then they'll swing out. You'll be able to put a pin in them to hold the doors open, and then you put them back, put a pin in them, and lock them. There'll be a personnel door on the side, and we can move that in. It's just a matter of, we had to come up with some sort of drawing to start.
Needless to say, this has been a burr under my saddle for, ever since I've been here, because I didn't want a tin shed up next to my house to help my property values. This looks like a pretty good way to go. So,
Yeah, we're trying to make it as attractive as we can.
good, thank you.
But the people that are close to it are you and myself and Mr. Rasco. So we want to make this as nice as we can, and as much cost effective as we can. So,
Questions, discussion?
the timeline for it, once we approve this, if it gets approved, we'll go up with the modifications that we apply to it here or desire. And then the folks at Mueller told me that it would be a week in drawing and 4 weeks before kickoff.
This will face these.
You take into consideration that somebody has pulled that off?
Yes.
Okay.
The one thing that is not on that drawing that I will take care of will be, the building will be on a footer all the way around to be determined. And the pump falls just outside of the side of that building, facing north. So we plan to have a doghouse. We'll build a little addition onto that with red iron, where the top lid will fold up, be pinned up, in case we gotta pull the well, pull the pump, and do some maintenance.
Which way is the door gonna face?
North. You talking about the door for the pump?
No, the door for the building.
The door for the building will face Mr. Rasco's, enter off of the street.
And the purpose for the doghouse is just gonna add to the ability to heat that during the winter, keep it warm. It still provides full access if we need to pull the well. The power box that's sitting there that we use for the well can be mounted on the side of the building. Therefore, all the electric can be put in conduit, run electricity. We'll have electricity and water available in the shed for cleaning and whatever we need to do there, as far as if we need a power wash or whatever on that end of it.
Also, there's a 6 feet of space on the side. If you look at the drawing, the two 10-foot openings that are in there, there's another 6 feet over there, the whole length, for controls for the water system that will eventually go in, and the lightings, if we care to expand on the lighting other than the dusk to dawn option that we're considering on that. Whatever other kind of workbench we need to put up in that, inside there, we'll have that down the side. So there's room for that as well, after you walk in the personnel door.
You go with windows or skylights maybe for,
Well, we'll have power, we'll have the power meter is right there, so we'll have windows put in, and if you guys want windows put in it, but
Skylights are a good consideration for ambient light in there. We can also go in with an LED lighting system of some sort. There'll be lighting one way or the other inside the building when it's dark. And then it's gonna provide place for us to store, supplies and equipment. The mowers will fit in there. We're gonna have it big enough to where if we have a tractor eventually that we can at least store it inside. So I think this is a move in the right direction to get our maintenance equipment inside plus protect the well. It's kind of a dual purpose building that we can use as a hub. I think we need to move forward with that. One of the points that we have, there was a contract signed back in 2020 that did not, basically the contract is still active because nobody ever canceled it. Some funds were spent by the HOA and we're in the process of figuring out how we can recover those funds. There were some expenses that were accumulated in the process that was started and then it was shut down. So I've had a discussion with the contractor involved in that, and we can. One of the downsides of thinking you can just go to a small claims court and file a claim to get your money back is that the contract's still active. So
And the contract is for what?
that was for the original building that was going to be built over by Uretski's that got shut down. And they'd put up rebar and we're getting ready to build foundation and everything else. And 50% of that cost was actually paid out of the HOA funds. And there's a lot of details that are going to go into possibly recovering that one way or the other. But we'll see if we can recover as much of those funds as we can. And that's another project we've been working on. It seems like everything I do, whether I do it today or tomorrow, the pay's the same, so keep working on it. I'd love to hear if there's anybody that doesn't have any more discussion on this, to move forward, we need a motion to proceed for finalizing the drawings and the expense and getting bids for how we're gonna construct this. And then once we get the final numbers out, we'll let the HOA see that number and then get board approval for the expenditure and we'll move forward on it. So we'd like to get that done as soon as possible.
I'll make a motion to proceed forward. I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Then we'll proceed and move forward and see if we can finalize the details on the storage building. Go ahead.
Excuse me, is there a quote for the concrete, either footings or,
That's what we need to get to finalize the deal is
because that's almost gonna be as expensive as the building probably.
well, the footers shouldn't be too bad, and if we do it, we've got options. That's what we have to really get involved in studying is either have somebody take a bid and build the footer for it, and I think using 3/4 inch crush on the inside for parking stuff on makes a lot of sense to me. If that'll stabilize the interior with leaks and everything else, all you'd end up doing, because I know I've had the equipment in my hangar for long enough that it's not drip free. And so I think footers with just rock inside would work well. But will come in the final design and we'll get bids on that.
Okay.
We kind of had to get this building size and all that stuff established before we start taking the concrete bids.
And quite frankly, I was pleasantly surprised at the cost of the building. It wasn't near as much as I thought it might be. I think with the incoming dues structure that we have in the bank right now, this will be, that's what we've been saving this money for.
And it is windstorm up to 120.
Yeah, windstorm for most of the Mueller building is 120 miles an hour, so if all else fails during a hurricane, if it goes over that, everybody else is in trouble anyway, so.
Just no short field landings on, around the windsock. That's all we ask.
So the irrigation system, next item that we've been working on, seems like forever. I think priority-wise, we'd like to get this building done first. And I think money-wise, we're gonna talk about light system. John Herman's got some information on that. The irrigation system could be it's not gonna be cheap, but I think, that's about number 3 on our priority. So maintenance building shed, get a lighting system in, and then start working on this irrigation system. And that's in design. Yes, sir?
Well, every quote I got a couple of years ago was between $45,000 and $60,000.
Irrigation.
Yeah, from 3 different companies
Yep.
with varying degrees of types of heads. None were on big stands on the side of the runway. That was the cheap way to go.
So we'll continue with that plan. It may come down, depending on how our budget withstands these first 2 items, to start working on the project. I'm retired now, so I've got people that are willing to volunteer to help with some of that. Or we can bid a turnkey operation as well. A lot of it's gonna be just a matter of what we can afford. It may not happen all at once, it may be partial. We'd really like to put something in similar to what Wade has up on his strip, which is a single wire system that you can individually control each head. That would accommodate our well system as far as flow and pressure and everything else. And then once you have that with the controls in the storage building, it's just a matter of programming the thing with the single wire. Wade's had good luck with his. It works very well. And I think 1-inch PEX is, for the flow ratings on the heads that we've looked at, is sufficient. And it's a pretty efficient way to get it in. It only takes, for us, we have to bury the stuff 12 inches for freeze protection. And then we'll have risers. And it's still in the planning stages. I gave everybody a plat. We're gonna come up with a design of what we need for the coverage. I have had a design made, I don't know, probably 10 years ago from a company, and they did a nice job. It's just a matter that we didn't have the funds to even move forward on that. So I think that is a work in progress, and as we get closer to that expenditure, we'll let everybody know and see how we can accomplish it. The runway lighting system upgrade, we've got John's done some really good work on that. I like solar. I think the solar aspect of it is a good way to go. If you want to talk about the lights.
Yep.
John, I printed everything if you wanna hang.
Oh, good,
it
okay.
down.
Well, I didn't have enough to print for folks.
I've got 7 copies.
Okay,
so
awesome.
If I can have a copy.
So, we've been working on this since 2019. Mike was on the committee with me. We started an airport operations committee and covered most of this stuff. We looked at some options. So, the first option was AC powered, and one of the problems with the AC powered is the need for a main transformer, which can be anywhere from $9,000 to $10,000. Each light requires an isolation transformer, which is $200. The wiring is $1 a foot, which is going to be near $10,000. So if you go with a lighting system, no matter what you do, whichever light you pick, well, those are nice copies too, man. Holy cow! I'm glad I didn't print mine off. Mine are sad. Okay, so then the wiring, any lighted system, no matter what you pick, is going to be about $30,000 more than anything else. And that's not even including any labor. And so the complexity of it has made me do exactly what Lynn is saying. Of course, we picked the alternative, the DC, because it was the least expensive at the time, and I'll cover that. So I have 2 quotes from companies. There's one called Airside Solutions, and another company is called Airfield Renewables. One is in Auburn, Washington, the other one is in British Columbia. They are both presenting the same product, which is AvLight products. And I asked them to give me a series of prices for options so that we could decide, what we're going to do. So option 1 is a system that is dusk to dawn. It involves, so before I ever go anywhere, the AV70 that you're looking at, whether it is the dusk to dawn or the radio frequency, the RF light, is a third of the cost of the AV426. Simply, the third option that I got a price for, the cost of the airfield lights would be $246,000. So, I can tell you that, when I got that one in the mail, I was like, yeah, well, that was nice. So then I got the next option, which is the radio controlled option. And that includes the entire field. And I got it from two companies, and they were within $300 of $3,000 of each other. These include solar runway edge lights in white in the AV70 in a pilot controlled form, so it'd be the AV70R. And then they have green and red lights at the end of the runway for threshold. Now, one company offered a handheld option for the control along with the pilot control, which added $3,500 to it, so scratch through that. And then the other company, they also added on, the runway end indicator lights and the power control system to do that, which added another $60,000. So the middle option, number 2, which is pilot control, one company, I'm sorry, I got the numbers here, my apologies. For 54 lights, $63,430. And the other company for the same system is $59,122. Now, one company added in that freight was included and the technical services, including the commissioning, were included. And that's the company in Auburn, Washington. I asked the company in British Columbia, on one of the quotes it said $2,000 for freight. I said, well, I've got a competitor's offer, and there's no freight and there's technical service. So I know British Columbia's a long way away, but this, even in Washington, having someone come down and supervise this to include getting it started is a big chunk of change. So, and then the first option here is a total dusk to dawn light option with the white lights as runway edge lights, and then green and red lights, and then the connectors. And the total cost for that was $42,514. Now, as I looked at this, the dusk to dawn it's certainly cheaper, but it has two downsides. Now that I've had those lights on my side of the runway for 4 years, I promise you that there are people that aren't happy with the light intensity, how long it's on, and I hear it, or they just come by and take the bulbs out. So that is you're never going to make, the book that says, how to, 50% of the people are going to be mad at you at any given time, so you have to learn how to just get through life without trying to make everybody happy. But the pilot controlled option would then allow you to, the second positive for that, besides being a better fit, is that there are a lot of other things, like the runway end indicator lights, beacons, and all that are all pilot controlled, that as we get down the road and we decide to add something, these would easily mesh into the system. So the $59,000 option, while it is a little more than 42, it is, I would say it would be my choice, as I've looked at all of this, because, again, it is hard to make everybody happy with this sort of thing. So I'm going to give all of these
That's with
quotes.
the RF, right?
That's RF, yeah, to include pilot control. And so I'm going to give all of this stuff to you guys in a file so you can look at it. So the Airside Solutions in Auburn, Washington, they included freight and included technical support, was $59,000, so a little bit less than the folks
The
at
aviation renewable, 66, was that one not?
Yeah, so to see the 3,500, there's a handheld on there.
Okay,
It's not necessary.
I got you.
So when I compared apples to apples,
You
I
can
took
delete
that out, and so I was within $3,000 based on the other company, but the difference, yes, they were lower, and they threw in shipping, and they threw in technical support, so as much as the other people started chatting with me on New Year's Day while the guy was on vacation, that's all great, but it's still, probably $5,000, maybe $8,000 in difference in price. So I'm gonna give you these, and so that you guys can see all four of the options. So here, I put option 1 as the total dusk to dawn. Option 2 and Airside Solutions would be the RF option with the AV70. And then I threw in in case somebody won the lottery and wanted to put in the giant lights for $250,000, it's in here, okay?
I'll cover that.
But, so these are the two, these are my recommended solar lights. And so, yeah, this one and those are, they're almost equivalent, except see where I scratched that out.
Okay.
And then I took this out of their quote because, this 12,000, these runway and indicator lights and the things to power them are $67,000. So if you remove that, you get $59,000, okay?
So John, this system is, we can add onto it.
Yeah, that's the reason why, for $15,000, you now have a system you can add on
Sure.
in perpetuity. And you probably have, like me, I've seen these overseas, and these lights get used.
Hilltop Lakes actually has these lights up there, and I spoke with the guy that's kind of oversees these lights yesterday, and he said batteries every 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, there are 100,000 hours of, they listed as 100,000 hours of use, and these are medium intensity, not low intensity.
So they're
So,
good lights, they love them, he said they never have any problems with them failing.
and not to throw, so the last thing is you guys have seen the lights that I have out there. Those are DC lights. They certainly are less expensive, but the problem is that getting a consistent DC power source, it would require that everybody that's along the runway would agree to at some point to have a transformer at their home so that we had a daisy chain of power, which is okay, but again, we're talking about people grousing about dusk to dawn. We might have a transformer that doesn't come on, so we have a spot in the system, doesn't work, or then we get there's another phenomenon with DC, so one of these things is out and the power tries to go to the last light, it'll burn out the lights as they go down, so there are downsides to this, so
These things also have a breakaway in case an airplane hits.
Yeah, so one of the costs in here, so there are two options. There's always, they've included that in there. You'll see that they're like 54 frangible concrete mounts. They recommended, there's a stake mount that's a less expensive that you can put in, and then there's a concrete pad mount that's frangible as well, it will break away, but they said they prefer those to keep the mowers away from damaging the lights.
That's a good idea.
So that's one of the reasons that price is included in there, and so you'll see it on a line item that says frangible concrete mounts. And again, they're sending me, they're trying to get a sample from Allied. And once I get that, I'll tell everybody where it is on the, field, and you can take a peek. But again, having looked, I've looked at airport transformers, I've looked at all of this other stuff, and the nightmare, and you can all imagine that us digging this out, co-locating lines with sprinkler system lines, somebody digging in a sprinkler system line to try to fix a broken pipe, it just almost, well, one, it's more expensive, but just doesn't make sense anymore.
I think this is the way to go. These
Yeah, the
have a
quality of
very
these.
good reputation.
So, the last thing I was gonna mention while I was talking about this is, so the one thing is that, whenever you have an idea, everybody will figure out how to challenge the idea. So, I've done a lot of reading, which is what I'm saying. And so, I also have, you know, Pappy boxes available to add to the system. They could integrate these in, you know. The pro is that we have some guidance, but the downside is, you know, I've heard, well, we don't wanna do that because then we take the responsibility for, you know, like a guidance system that gets checked every week at a main airport. So that is an option. I have, anybody can look at the equipment, they can be used. And then finally, I have 3 things that we can read about. There's one, Texas Farms and Ranch Airstrip Bill Guide, the marking and lighting of unpaved runways guide, and there's a lighting and marking of unpaved runways in-service testing that I found online, which they were all developed in the 70s. And I guess why I wanted to bring this up is, you know, we have lights, but there are a bunch of other options to make most people don't realize it, but there are a lot of other options to do things like highlight where the windsock is. You know, right now, you know, Beetle and I, mine's broken, but, you know, we have the windsocks on the field. But they went through and wrote a lot about how to mark unpaved runways. They have some suggested things like a touchdown zone that would go around. So as we put lights in, if we choose to do more, there are suggestions on how to lay out additional things that help with visibility. And without taking up a lot of time, I can share that at some point as we get down the road. So.
And the airman's information has got us down.
Yes. So these are interesting because I read just about every advisory circular on marking, but these 3 in particular are geared toward rural grass strips, and they even the third one, which I said. So what they did is when they published this in 1974, then they came back in the 80s and they had an in-service asking people in the FAA what their thoughts were on the various, so they prioritized which of these suggestions were the most helpful. So I could spend a lot of time telling you what they said. The fact is, if we're interested at some point, we can talk about whether we want a segmented circle. You know, I've been looking for a way to make the moving tetrahedron wind direction thing, but I can't find the right the right thing that my wife will let me have in the yard.
Right.
So anyway,
Got an old Starbuster you found.
well, that's a possibility.
I got a question, you guys. How much night traffic do you have?
Fair amount.
Huh?
There's a fair amount of people that come in after
Well,
dusk.
you know, I know.
And without lights, you get to crash. It's a terrible thing. I mean, yeah. So I'm just
Well, yeah.
before we have too much conversation on this, I probably ought to go.
Well, I'm just looking at saving some money. I mean, the Continental Ops Manual says you couldn't have these, but I think it'd be a lot cheaper to go with burn barrels. Can't we just, can't you guys just use that?
And we can
One
go
more
back
thing to
and
maintain.
really live the old life and get smudge pots.
Yeah.
There you
I've
go.
got 2
So I went out with, I've been going out at night with my tractor helping light the runway when Rob comes in from Ellington. And, you know, we have a great field. And I will show you the pathway on ForeFlight. I was absolutely over the threshold. I couldn't see the field, and I went around to go back to Conroe, and that's what
Well, I
plane
think
had
these things
shield
are a great
separation.
deal because we can do this initial. We can lit them up, light them up, dust to dawn. Hilltop Lakes has them up there. They work wonderful for them. Everybody lives on a runway. They live on a runway because they like having lights. If you look
Right.
at 90% of the
It is.
people that live on the runway have
Sure.
their own little blue taxiway lights.
I mean,
you know, on their
and the
driveway.
cheaper option, of course, is to do them dusk to dawn. You know, that's another, I mean, so what I'm
There's a
saying
lot of
is,
advantage to this to dawn, particularly if you've got somebody that actually has a failure that needs some place to land and they can see it.
Right.
And we've had several instances of that, even though they didn't quite make it to the runway. But I think that's something, if you've ever lost an engine in an airplane, it changes your whole perspective of when you fly, because you're always, as a contingency, looking for a place to land in case the engine quits. And it didn't make any difference what airplane I was flying. You wanted to figure out how to do that. So
Well, I'll leave that up to you guys. Like I said, I've gone through this, and part of my reason for picking option 2 was trying to meet everyone's expectations, but quite honestly, I run those lights dusk to dawn. They don't bother me. Those are 7-watt lights. They're 1,100 lumens in each one of those things. If I put 10 in there, Dale then comes and takes the bulbs out, but other than that.
Dale lives on the runway, everybody lives on the runway.
Yeah, so anyway.
Actually, I like looking at the lights, it doesn't bother me a bit.
Any additional questions? Because my son, who came from Camp Lejeune, now is panicked to go take his U-Haul back, and so.
No, we thought you bought that.
Yeah, no. Any additional questions that I can answer?
Yeah, John, are those lights directional?
Yes.
They are.
Okay.
They, if you look at did you see the
I was just
design?
looking at it.
Yeah, so they look like a miter hat,
Right.
like for a cardinal. And so the lights that come out of them are directional up and down the runway. The same thing with the red and the green.
And they also
On the
have vertical
threshold.
penetration too.
Yeah.
The key, yeah, that's the key thing that I think for the existing lights that we have is the downfall of them is they don't have vertical penetration. That's why they're difficult to see from the air.
What did you figure out the lumens on these for?
Based on what I saw, it looked like about 250.
Oh, and the ones that you mean on the
On the
solar or the?
Yeah, the solar.
Oh,
The
yeah.
L7s.
Because the ones that I have in there are 1,100. The bulbs are 1,100, and then so those marine lights are $5 per mile marine beacons. So we've actually I've flown and looked at those. So they have prisms that go up and that go down. So part of that is not to make them terrible side to side, but again, it's about how to power those.
Sure.
It's not that they wouldn't work because they can be seen from a long way off. But
I think the solar is pretty good. And by the way, an individual we were talking to yesterday says that there's a civilian, like a construction application of those, the exact same light for less than half the cost. He thinks he can find where we can get them.
That'd be great.
And we'll
Because
explore that option.
what I see right now is if we want to replace basically that runway's line with 40 lights. And at 40 lights, the white ones to redefine the edge markers, which I think would be a great test for us. That'd be a good starting place. We can do that within the budget. I think you're, $608 per light. If we can find them cheaper with another application, that's fine too. I like the mounting on the stake side of it or on a PVC pipe just because it's breakable. And then the other thing we can still do, just like on the cones, when the reflective tape was fresh on those cones, it worked amazingly well. If you were on short final, you saw the whole runway just from the reflective tape, let alone the lights. And we've already got the spacing out there. If a mower hits the plastic pipe, these would be elevated. It's not going to take out the light. It's going to knock the pipe over. So also, anything that's firm concrete in the ground is just one more thing that adds cost to it, in my opinion. What I would like to see us do is order 40 of these 80-70 Dust to Dawn lights, install them. I'd be happy to install them, get them put in, and that will be the test phase. Then if we want to add red and greens at the end, the other thing about runway lighting, which I think would be good, is to put cap lights on all the fences, both ends. We could do those in red, we could do them in white, whatever you want, but from overhead, you will know where the end of the runway is. And the funny part is, the way it's designed, you have an angled flat end on the north end with an arrow pointing that, yeah, that's the other end, based off of how the fence is set up. So,
so the things flashing in my yard are $12 Amazon solar beacons. They flash, and there are a couple of them out there that have been out there for 3 years. And they were in a box, and I was like, okay, see how far away I could see the green and the red.
and there's
So-
even a red aviation light, believe it or not, that's solar powered, that's Northern Tool cells for $50 a pop that you could put and mount on the end of those fences. And
I've looked at I will
Some
tell you, I
people
have a
complain
long
about-
laundry list of this, but one of the things I didn't want to do is take responsibility for, my wife said, whatever you do, do not volunteer to put these in, because I don't want people calling us when they're out. You know, so, I mean, I went and got the information from a company, because, like you said, it's up to the board to decide what you wanna do, and I'm happy to give you whatever information. I mean, there's some great ideas about daytime markers that you can make.
How long are those stakes? I mean, with our soil contracting and, you know, wet and dry, are they,
The details on here.
Yeah,
show
the
they are
details in there, yeah.
12 and 30 inch.
okay, so you can go deep enough to where they're.
30 inch.
30 inch would be great.
Yeah, you can also push a collar in the ground and
Yeah.
have these with us.
Well, so what I've had success with, the lights that are on the side of my property, I have 1.5 inch PVC that I have put into the ground, and I have 2 inch PVC over it. So it gets no water in it, it's easy to pull off, it doesn't have any attachments, and it's very easy to break. I mean, it's 1.5 inch PVC. So,
And you can pull the lights up very easily.
yeah, I mean, I use L brackets and stainless steel lathe screws to put the others. So I mean, there are a bunch of options, but again, I just tried to present. I got in touch with the company. So the company Flight Light is where we can buy the lights directly from those guys. They have a shop online option, but again, that's us taking all the responsibility for putting these in. The cost of the Flight Light and the cost from Airside Solutions for equipment is almost identical. So by buying them from those guys, at least you get somebody out that comes and does the survey, puts them in, and gives you technical assistance, and the freight then shipping them from where they come from is also free. So, I mean, we may just, once you guys just make a decision, I get in touch with Jason, or you guys can get in touch with him. The list, the guy's name is on there, and the quote's good till March. And you can say, we don't want RF, we want dusted on, and
Yeah. Lynn, what do you think about proceeding forward with these, and
I'd like to
looking
see
at
us,
those
I'd like to see us
red lights
purchase,
on the end?
I'd like to see us purchase 40 of the 8070 white lights right now, and move forward with that, get them installed.
And then we can
And
look
then,
at the red.
and then as we
lights.
go budget-wise, we can add to whatever we need to on the ends. We're talking about PAPI systems, there's a lot of different ways you can do that if we think that's necessary. If not, we can educate pilots how to look at their windshield and figure out where they're going to from.
I agree.
Um,
Would be nice to have the runway end identifier lights, those red ones on the fence posts, so we could.
And that's easy to do and not terribly expensive. So, I add up at $608 a light, we're looking at, roughly $25,000 for doing the 40 lights. I think that's very doable in our current budget with the other projects we've got going on. I'd entertain a motion to move forward with that and get that ball rolling, and then we can get them installed. And now we can see, and they have, I'm sure, a 30 or 90 day money back guarantee. If we can get them installed and nobody likes them and they don't like what they're doing, then we can send them back. But I think that's the right direction we need to take, and we need to take action on it. So,
well, going from a
Make a
$10,
motion.
oh, I'm sorry, going from a $10 solar light to something real would be, I don't know how many people complain, because
I'll make a motion that we proceed forward with that.
I'll second that.
there's a motion on the floor to proceed with the purchase of 40 of the AV70 lights for installation and concept proofing that. All in favor, say aye. Motion passed. We'll consider that moving forward, and we'll work on the details of getting it purchased.
thank you guys,
Thank
that's
you.
exciting.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks, John.
My pleasure.
Moving on.
I'm going to get rid of that U-Haul trailer before my son.
I need to chat with you. You were busy the other day, so I'll be back on,
Oh, yeah, that's
I'll be back on Monday.
Okay, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
Next item up for discussion, just information-wise, runway sanding. I think I misquoted on the last minutes. It was 440 yards of sand that we applied so far. That was about $6,000 worth of sand. It's a mixture of, I know where it's coming from. It's good stuff because it not only stabilizes it, but it sands and it packs in easily. And we're probably gonna have to do another $6,000 worth of sand to finish up the crown, and then we're gonna start working on these taxiways. There's a couple taxiways that if you want to experience a roller coaster ride, I'll put you on the mower and you can go over and mow it, because Jack Dean supposedly spent $2,400 on that one taxiway, and it's a mess. It's just nasty. So we'll move forward with that, and anytime, due to restrictions that we put in place a long time ago, because we had a president that spent almost the entire budget off of his legal woes, we're limited to, I think the latest, it used to be 5,000, I think it's down to 3,000 that the president can spend without board approval. I'll just send out the information and we'll let the board know and we'll press on from there. If people have questions for that, but that's, I did the application process, it worked relatively well. It was a day's worth of work, but we got a lot of sand put on. Actually, it was 2 days worth of work, but we'll press on with that. Power line at the south end of the field is very entertaining. Tim Toll kind of took that under his wing and started making phone calls because the balls have slid together. And between talking to Chico and Energy, no one claims to own the lines. So they're just looking at this thing, I think, as a liability. Nobody wants to say anything. So that's still a work in progress.
So if the lines fell down on a dark and stormy night,
Who knows who would come out? I'm pretty convinced that
Anyway,
Chico.
that'd be gone.
Well, yeah. You have to go into it with something if the power's off. And anyway,
Yes.
so we'll continue on that. The Ponderosa Drive taxiway obstruction mailboxes, I'm drafting the letter right now. It's a 60-foot clearway. Anybody that's got an obstruction, whether it be a taxi or a mailbox or a sign, is going to get notification. Once they get notification, it's 45 days to remedy that. And we'll work with them. If somebody wants to bark about it, we can have a meeting, an executive session, and say, well, what's your plan? Because we've got to protect the right of taxiing an airplane. That's a dual-purpose road. It's a right-of-way. Yes, you have a right to get your mail, but it has to also comply with the road.
Rough as it is right now, I don't see anybody going down there without a prop strike.
Well,
Unless you're doing
the
tailwind.
195 goes back down there, but I have to dodge stuff as I go. So anyway, there will be.
I have a comment about those balls. 20 years ago, I had Energy out there, and they
Was it Energy or was
yeah,
it?
it was Energy.
Okay.
Sam Houston didn't want to talk to me about it, but Energy was there, and I was standing down there talking to this guy, and I had him pretty well convinced. We didn't have any naval aviators on the airfield except for me, and I didn't want to make a 3-wire trap sometime on one of those damn light balls, those balls on there. And I just about had him convinced to take the damn power lines down. And Jim Bow rolled up on his John Deere tractor and said, oh, no, don't worry about health. And anybody comes in here and hits those wires, they gotta have permission to be here in the first place, they should know about it. And the end result was the 2 balls that are down there, but it was Energy.
It was interesting.
And
Anyway, interesting. Status of public use at a private airport. We've done a lot of research on that, and the summation I've gotten from Eric and Jay have done the work on it. And basically, the way we have obstructions at our airport right now, I'm not too sure that the FAA would approve it as a public use airport.
That and we get our protection from the way that the airport's set up right now, according to Dan Harmon, who's head of all of this stuff for the state of Texas. In the conversations that I had with him, we don't have to worry about having towers put up and so forth that obstruct the airport, because anytime somebody wants to do that, there's a way that they have to apply for it that brings all of the federal agencies into the loop. And they look at the airports that are in the area to make sure that they're not being obstructed with whatever tower or rising device that they decide to put up. So it also opened up another great big can of worms with the city, public use, people coming out to the airport. We're a whole lot better off leaving it like it is.
Any questions or discussion on that? I'm gonna move on. Runway maintenance, mowing, winter maintenance, got to take the mower down to our service center that works on those specific mowers and get the annual maintenance done on that. I'll haul those down there and get that done. I don't anticipate any major expenses on that, just routine maintenance for the most part. We've got maybe a leak or 2 here and there that they can look at. The mower actually performed pretty well this year. We had some leaks with some lines that I had to replace that were just getting old. And for the most part, it's still plugging along pretty well. So, once we pressurize the water system again, we may have an additional leak, which is consistent with the amount that the dirt moves in this system. So if we find wet spots, or if you find, and anybody says we got a wet spot in front of our house, I think we've had some issues down there between Mike Rawlsburgers and Pat Shannon, and some wet spots along that, and it's not terribly expensive, and the people that Wagner Services, if I call them, we've got a good relationship with them, and usually they come right out and get after it and get it fixed. So that's the main line, and it's interesting during the drought. He told me a statistic that was just blew me away. Between here and Galveston, the city of Houston, when they have a drought and all this earth moves, they'll have 1,000 reports of leaks a day. So that's continuing on there. Seeding and fertilizer, we're going to do that again this spring, and I'll hopefully have the rest of the stand, and then we'll mix the seeding in with the sand, and then we'll be having, hopefully, one way or the other, we're going to be watering it. If we have part of the irrigation system in it, we'll be using that, and we've got the old sprinkler up to snuff now with parts that we had to purchase because some of the things failed on that. So we're going to be able to put water on it one way or the other. One's just a little more labor intensive. Fire ant treatments. Baseman's found a product that's similar to Extinguish that's called Bifidrin, and it's a granule. You can spot treat or you can do general broadcast.
What's it called?
See if I can pronounce this. I'm not in Kansas, we can't pronounce this stuff very well. It's called Bifen, B-I-F-E-N-L/P. It's an insecticide granular. My impression with what I did this last year in treating fire ants is that they were getting this stuff like candy, and it wasn't effective. Baseman put this stuff on his yard. It has a 6-month guarantee of prevention, and he says he's getting about a year out of it. So I think we're going to try to do a shift this spring, or even earlier than that, because we got fire ants everywhere, and try this Bifen and give it a shot, because I just think we're to the point to where we're wearing out the effectiveness of Extinguish. And I've heard that before, and ants are some of the most industrial animals in the world. So going forward, I'm going to check on pricing on it. It's comparable in cost. Extinguish for 25, 50-pound bag of it was running around $200 a bag. We spent about $1,200 on fire ant this last year. That pretty much does all the open lots or anybody that wants it, plus the runways and taxiways. So I'm going to start doing some shopping for the Bifen and see if we can do that and see what the results are. So that's kind of where I'm moving on the fire ant thing, and maybe we'll have better containment on that. Drainage-wise, I know we get some water backed up. I know Eric has some issues with water backing up. And the bottom line is somehow, some way, we got to keep all the culverts clear, and if there's trash wherever this water's coming in, we got to keep stuff cleared out. We can help do that as an HOA, even if it's on somebody's private property. But regardless of the size of the culverts on the airstrip, it's only going to leave the airstrip as fast as the natural flow is going to go out to the ditch, which is out on 150. So when that ditch gets full, guess what? The flow rate decreases out, and we don't have control over that. So that's where we can adjust drainage. The HOA has the ability to do that through the rights and the deed restrictions, where we see that we need to change something or modify something. It's on a personal lot, they're responsible for it, but we can help them with it. But that's something that there's some areas on the runway that we have wet spots. There's one in front of Scalafanis, there's one up by Steigers, that we're just going to need to add some more ground dirt there and maybe increase that drainage that goes out the north end. So that's a work in progress. It always will be, and until you get 6 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, you'll see what's effective and what's not. Any questions, discussions on that? All right, moving on. Storage shed, we've already talked about that. I'm in negotiations and figuring out what we can do to recover our money that was paid to a contractor. We'll see what we can get out of that one way or the other. New business concern letters.
Then before we move forward.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to make a motion? Would it be the best thing for the HOA to terminate that contract or proceed forward?
There is a, believe it or not, and that's something else that I do have a copy of the original receipt. And I don't know, Jack Dean was involved in that. I did find some minutes. But the receipt for that, to move forward, there were no signatures on it. I don't know if it was ever signed. What I've done in research though, which is interesting in Texas, once money has been transferred or paid, then that signs the contract.
Consummates the contract.
And so it even goes to the point in the state of Texas, if you have a verbal contract, just by speaking, it's valid. For example, if you propose to buy a lot and you agree on the price, then it's verbal, and then one side reneges on the deal, you could technically go to court and say, we had a verbal agreement. Now, I'm sure in a court case like that, he said, she said, would come into play. I'm just not comfortable doing that kind of stuff, but that's how Texas approaches this stuff. So I do have a form that is a form that the HOA has on their website of termination of a contract. And so what I may do, I'm gonna do some more research on that. I think a motion to cancel the contract would be formal, and we fill out the paperwork. That's in place as a contingency to say the contract is null and void. And then if, depending on what the outcome of the negotiations, we can proceed with that and see where it goes. Does that make sense?
It does. Good question.
Yes, sir.
What materials did Rusty buy?
There was a building, forms, rebar.
So
It's
the
set
rebar
up.
we might be able to use on the current one.
It's all gone.
It's all gone. Okay. Good.
I mean, that was in 23 years, and it's set on a trailer up at his place, and
Well, if it's
It-
gone, and he's used it, then there should be recourse to cancel the
I
contract.
agree. I agree with that. And I also agree that he did have some setup expense. He started the process, and then it got shut down midway through it, which it was barely started, but there were some expenses in that. So
Mhm.
I look at both sides of the fence and say, okay, so what expenses do you have? I don't have firm numbers on that yet, but
Let's see, the other side of the coin is I'm sure rebar is more expensive today.
that's the whole thing, is everything is probably
Yeah.
double.
So if he's used it at the old price, then there's a cash difference here. So canceling the contract will have a little teeth in it.
I agree.
So I think, yeah, putting something on the table to cancel. would be
So I would
wise.
entertain a motion to go ahead and fill out the paperwork to cancel the contract and move forward with
I'll make the
negotiations.
motion.
I'll
Okay.
second
All in favor, say aye.
it. Aye.
Okay, we will move forward with that to cancel the contract. I'll get the paperwork lined out, we'll get signatures on it, and then, let the games begin.
Rusty may be agreeable. I assume this is gonna wind up in a settlement of some kind. But
That's my hope.
I don't know if he has material still laying around that might be usable.
He
Well,
may put
but
it up
if
on
it's sat
his
on a
property,
trailer
you
for
never
5
know.
years, it may be questionable,
Yeah, I know. I'll find that information out. and we'll-
because that would be the bargaining chip.
We'll
Yes.
find out where the material, if he's got the building, and
Yeah.
it's available to us.
What I've been told so far is everything has been used or gone or sold.
Well, then he's money ahead on the deal.
Oh, no doubt.
He's got a $16,000 loan without no interest.
Yeah.
I agree. New business-wise, concern letters, we've had a couple concern letters filed. Unauthorized aircraft parked outside, or airworthy aircraft parked outside, and then unauthorized signage on vacant lots. And then I refreshed a letter today, because I went in the records, I wrote a letter concerning Ponderosa Drive and obstructions, I don't know, 8-10 years ago. And if you try to click on it to find out where it's at, it either shows an error or it's not there, so it may have been expunged. The only response I got from the board at that point in time was, we'll look into it, and nothing ever took place. So there's a fresh concern letter concerning that. Everybody that's got obstructions out there is gonna get a letter, and we'll look for a remedy, which under Texas law, HOA law now, it's 45 days. And the bottom line, this isn't to pounce on anybody, it's to work with them so that we can respect the right of way, so that everybody has equal access to the runway. The other thing I forgot that I don't have on the list is that I went ahead and opened up that fence because there was a request for a south runway taxi access. And so it's gonna require a 34 quart steel culvert like to do is at least move forward and get the culvert purchased. I can contact a contractor that can come drop it off, and he's done it before for other people. And then if I remember correctly, when you install one of those culverts, due to the fact it's county maintained roads, they have to come out and supervise the grade as well.
I don't know if they've changed the rule, but when I put my culvert in, they said it had to be steel.
Yes,
Steel pipe.
steel pipe is still required by the county. That's
Okay.
correct. We can't do plastic.
But I think there's some culverts out there that are not.
Well,
I know one of them, and it's, you're dealing with the county again, so.
when I
But-
had my driveway
They probably
poured,
got put in without county supervision, but.
when I had my driveway poured, the concrete guy went to the county and they said, we don't ever see that anymore.
Wouldn't
Okay.
surprise me.
You know,
But that's a whole lot
they
cheaper
basically
culvert.
said if the homeowner is happy with it, we're fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Because steel pipe is darn expensive.
So I'll look at those options for us, so we can at least get that done, and then there will be some fill associated with that for a smooth transition from the road over there,
Okay.
and we'll get that going.
Need a motion for that?
I'd like a motion to have, I'd entertain a motion to move forward with the culvert process for the south end runway taxiway access.
I'll put forth that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. I make new friends every day, and sometimes if I don't say it when I think of it, then I've lost me. So there, I've got the letters, I'm gonna have you guys sign them before we leave today for the concern letters for signage, and I've got one for you, Ted, just so you'll have it. It still has to come to you by certified mail, but,
For the sign on my property. Don't I have the deed restrictions, like the first or second page? I pretty much have on my property what I want as a developer. No questions asked.
The problem is now that that's based off of a developer that still has control of the HOA, and you lost that with the sale of the lots.
So I don't have control on my property?
This has to comply with
Send
the
me a letter.
restrictions.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I wanna ask the board here, everybody, what is the problem with Rusty Woods?
It's,
I mean,
I'm
everybody.
not gonna go down
I
that
understand.
road.
Well, I
but-
wanna know, cause I'm here, and I hear about this bullshit one way or the other. Now, if somebody's got a problem, I'd like to know, only because I keep getting a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this.
I can tell you it's he said, she said. I've heard both sides of the story, and it doesn't matter, because the deed restrictions are very, very clear, and you'll see that in the letter, that the only signs approved out here, unless there's active construction going on, are for sale signs, period.
And after we're done here, I'll tell you about my legal action against Rusty Wood.
Okay, then that's fine, just.
But that's, once the concern letter's been written, I have to go with that. It's nothing I get along fine with Rusty Wood, but that's what the deed restriction says. Once I get a concern letter, we have to act on it. That's the procedure. And so if you choose not to move the sign, or he, or whatever, it will be moved 45 days after notification of the letter, and the HOA has full rights to go in there and move the sign. So it's a choice. That's the enforcement right of the HOA. He can put a camera up, he can talk to Chitwood, he can do whatever he wants. But those signs will be removed after 45 days of notification.
Hello?
So why as a developer, I'm just not there anymore, is that right?
No, you're a lot of them.
Right, right.
Good, how are you?
And Rusty said, I discussed it with Rusty, he goes, well, if I move it 12 feet across the fence to the next, to Manor, or whatever the name of the development is over there, he goes, I know the guy, I think I can move it over there. I said, that would satisfy the requirement.
Well, since we're on that piece of property, what's going on over there? Does anybody know?
Yeah, there's a variety of information on it. I think they've got some concerns with the county on roadage, and they got stopped because of structural that wasn't included or approved by the county, so the county shut them down.
It's back up again.
That's what we hear.
As of this week.
Yeah, we hear that they're gonna start doing something.
That's one concern I was bring up when you get around.
Well, all I know is I know the contractor that's gonna do all their water and sewer, and his timeline is second quarter to start going.
Oh, so
We've
there's a
got-
fire.
So we're getting information that this thing's going forward. There's a lot of lots over there that have already been sold to developers for spec homes. So it's gonna go in. I mean, you talk to any realtor, talk to Rusty Shannon, he goes, it's going in. I mean, they'll get through all this, and the segue there as well is I talked to David Decker, I think it's David Decker. Brandon Decker. He's the commissioner of the roads, the county roads, and Melissa has taken that, God bless her, she's a cute little blonde, has a great voice, and she has made a friend of this guy. And we want to see if we can get the roads either finished or reworked so that we've got good road skin, because there's places where they need to be reworked. And he came out to the property and looked at it and goes, yeah. So Melissa was able to extract information from him. He literally has 140 miles of road in the county to maintain. His total budget is about let's say just under $400,000 to do.
$65,000.
So he came out and he said, I can provide you with everything except the materials. And to do the entire, to tear it up, to redo it, they'll clean out the ditches, they'll do regrade and everything else for just Ponderosa Drive and Longhorn Loop at $265,000. That would be an assessment if we chose to do that from every property owner of $6,500. I don't think that's gonna fly. But there may be some other alternatives that we can do, such as a lot of that road was taken care of and did have new asphalt placed on it. So I'm supposed to have lunch with him this next week, and we're gonna discuss this. I'm gonna have the plats, and I'm gonna go out and measure the areas of the road that were not overlaid and say, well, we don't necessarily need you to come in and tear the whole place up, but what if we just finished up the partial job that you did? Now, that might reduce the cost and improve our roads and potentially get them to where they could blend this all together and we'd have fresh asphalt on
And
it.
use what we have existing there.
Yeah, and use what we have existing there. So those are some of the things I'm gonna discuss with him on these roads to see if we can get some movement forward on that. The bottom line is that it's county maintained roads, and so we have to deal with them. But they also understand, and Melissa's done a great job of explaining to him the tax base that they have out there. And we do have a real strong tax base because of the value of the property.
He came out and looked at the roads.
Yep.
He's also invited us to go to some of the meetings that he has to go to for his budget appropriation, to speak to the right people and learn who those people are and help get the budget increased for his roads here. We intend to do
What's
that.
his name again?
Brandon Decker.
Has he been there?
He's a
while?
commissioner.
He took Jimmy Henry's place.
Oh, I think I met, yeah, okay.
Very nice guy on the phone,
Yeah, yeah.
very receptive, and he said, call me this next week and we'll go have lunch.
He's got the
So-
same hairdo you do.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
Good looking guy.
all I can say is at least we have somebody to talk
Yeah.
to, and then the positions that they deal with, and he goes, it's all politics, and he goes, the bottom line is, they don't give a whole, the Walker County, they could care less about a lot of these roads, because look at the budget, they're at the bottom of the food chain. So maybe we can change that. The other alternative, he goes, nobody wants to hear this, I can raise your taxes, and he has the power and authority to do that too, but,
A road commissioner?
well, he's part of the commission. I mean, he says, the answer would be if you don't, is to raise your taxes, which nobody wants to hear.
Right.
He goes, that's the other
Did
answer.
y'all discuss with him, taking over the maintenance totally and actually getting rid of the county, putting the gate up, those things? Is that a feasibility?
So there's been talk of that before, and it would be, the intricacy part of it would be, could you take those roads private? The challenging part would be, you'd have to get the people that are outside of the HOA involved in that as well and approve. It's like putting a security gate at the entrance. That's just not HOA stuff, that's the entire community and right-of-way access for those people like Hal and everybody else that lives over there. Is it doable? Can you negotiate a thing? What would be the cost? I mean, that's something we can look
Those
at
are county roads, right?
right now. But there's been
Take
roads
it
in a lot of
private?
subdivisions that you could
Oh.
potentially take them private.
Oh, okay.
And then the responsibility, maintenance and upkeep and everything else falls on everybody.
Yeah.
And, it's like herding cats, getting everybody to agree on, and you're gonna turn the seatbelt switch on, so. As you well know.
Yeah.
I got one thing.
Yes, sir.
On the delinquent dues, I was contacted by a homeowner in December before I was on the board, but said that it's illegal to charge 18%. I'm only bringing that up because I don't know what the percentage is if they're delinquent, but, just,
What did he say the percentage was?
he thought it was 12, and he is delinquent.
Yes, and so I know who that was, and we discussed that, and I said, that law was just changed.
Okay.
So I pulled that up off the Texas site for
Okay.
interest charges, and that's what it came to.
Is this Cooper again?
I'm not going into
Yeah.
names.
I didn't either. I just wanted to let, the board know that I was contacted before
Yeah, I was contacted too.
and, I did not know, I knew it used to be 12%. But, whatever it is legally, I mean, that's what
So if they can say illegal, okay, so what?
Yeah.
We'll do whatever the state is, but deed restrictions really clear, maximum allowable in the state, that they're in jurisdiction. So, good point. What else do I have here? Any questions that you guys have? Because we're at the point of where we've got about 42 minutes left.
You just covered one of my points of concern, and that's the fact that we're running out of patches to hold the asphalt together on the road. So that you covered that aspect of it. Along with the notification that the manager is back up and running again as of this week. I think we need to take a look at the fact that if New Waverly doesn't get greedy and decide to annex that, it's gonna amaze me. And we're in between. So I fought this battle fairly seriously with Eagles Nest up in Midlothian. The Eagles Nest has been there since 1964. And all of a sudden, all the soccer moms and everybody decided that they wanted to annex that to the town of Midlothian. And trying to prove grandfather that keep your cotton picking hands off became a very stringent legal battle. So we might start looking at that, just to be certain that some genius doesn't come up with the idea of, man, look at all that money that's sitting out there and those great big houses and all of that crap. Because we don't need to be annexed into the city of Midlothian.
Well, that's true, and that's another reason that
So
we're
if you're
developing a relationship
Each
with
one.
Mr. Decker,
Those are the three cases.
because he's a very valuable asset in all of that, and he understands that out there, so
You know?
we really were looking at all of
Yeah,
those.
for you.
Who are you talking to about?
I'm talking that there was a bulletin put out online that they've got the manor approved to go back and start working again.
That's the
My
development
concern
next to us.
is that.
Oh, next door?
Yeah, next door.
Those, okay, yeah, and?
But here's another thing on that too. That would shut down because it didn't have two entrances going in. And also, they're gonna be required to pay for a turn lane in there that is very expensive.
We also need to find out, my understanding is they're not going to be on either city, utilities, either sewage or
That's
water.
correct. That's correct, they're gonna have their own.
And if they're gonna have their own water, they're gonna have their own in-ground like we got, that's fine. But there are only two of us that I know of right now, on Longhorn or on Ponderosa, that are on city water. And I can remember when it was a 2-inch line. It was along about time it was also a wagon trail. And fortunately, we're over both of those, but I hate to think what happens to our water pressure and our water supply if we gotta now start supporting a whole great big subdivision over there through the city of New Waverly.
Well, I understand, but, they'll probably bring it up to spec, yes, but that's development. All we can do.
We're not a spec
play the
yet.
politics.
So
We are not
depending-
in spec yet.
So I can find out, because I know who's doing the sewer and water over there, if they're planning on putting in a water plant and a sewage plant.
No.
Shannon sent, I just picked up a piece of email the other day that the last hangup for this guy was fire hydrants.
Correct.
So,
We ought to have that
on a
one.
2-inch line, fire hydrants really pull off a lot.
That's why I'm thinking that he's gonna put in a water system. I know he's doing it, and he does all of it, so I'll find out if he's gonna put in
Because
it.
we have a fire hydrant on our entire development.
Yeah.
James Bohan's daughter is very involved and works for that company. And I've talked to her about it, and she knows it down. I can probably find out exactly where they're at on, when they're gonna start building.
It
But I
just
think
gets,
you're right, in the second quarter.
It gets to be a real hair-pulling situation with, if they decide they wanna annex us,
Well,
and I don't have anything to give.
here's,
To you.
well, it's interesting that annexation comes in a lot of different forms, and a move in that direction would be that if they put a water plant and a sewage plant in, that, that's when that's complete, and that's when they'll go in and annex, because they want the water and the sewage plant.
Mhm.
And he's done that before, he's done it down in, off of Teeswood, and it's a fascinating way that they do that. The developer pays for all the installation of the water and the sewage. He builds a plant that's also paid by the developers. He's done it over here in these big ranches as well. And the fascinating thing is, once it's all done, he's been paid for all that.
Mhm.
He owns the system free and clear, and gets money for every gallon of water and sewage that goes through that
That's a
system.
big ranch. That's a municipal.
So
Well, it's fine for him,
so-
I'm concerned
so-
about
They'll
us.
put out
Well, I
bonds
understand
for
that,
it.
but I'm
They'll
just
sell-
explaining to you how the process goes, because whether a city can go in and they're looking for tax revenue is why they annex. So they won't generally annex something that doesn't have a mud district and water and sewer. And so those are some questions I can ask the source and find out exactly what's
We
going
got
on.
district water, supposedly.
Well, it is city water. Yeah, you have that option out there where we're at. But that's different, but we're not annexed.
No, that's what I'm trying to
So,
avoid.
well, I understand that, and the challenging part there is when they come in, it's almost like eminent domain rules with what they can try to do for annex. I don't know the specifics on that, but I'm pretty sure that's,
I'm wishing at this point that I'd gone ahead and dropped the well, cause I just spent $3,700 having to have about half of my plumbing system cleaned out from all the crap and the mud and the shit that was in it. Excuse
you
my
should
French.
put in all that crap and mud and
I
stuff.
don't like that, I don't like that crap.
Hey, the city water's got a lot of calcium, it messes up everything in my house.
It does.
Anybody else have questions, comments? Is there anything I could do to improve how I'm doing this? Is there anything I could do to improve how I run these meetings and what I'm doing so far?
Oh, I think you're doing a pretty good job yourself. What about, can I bring up a subject about, maybe talking about this fuel situation for the hangars?
Oh, that's a good point, because that'll bring me to this other, so
Yeah.
something that does need to be done with our deed restrictions and our covenants is they really need a refresh. And we're gonna start taking sections at a time. It takes us, it's either a 67 or 70% vote to change the deed restrictions. It's not a hard process. But you'll go in there and do a rewrite, and one of the sections that's been screwed up since the day I've been out here is the fact that it says you can only have 5 gallons of fuel stored on your lot. Well, that's just, it's never been enforced, and it certainly doesn't make any sense. And I can guarantee you, I'm not gonna fill the mowers up with 5 gallons at a time and go back to town and fill them up again. Never have, never will. That's just a fact of life. So I think as a segue into this, we'll do something simple and modify it. Once we modify it, and it takes everybody to vote on it. The other thing I'm wanting to think about from a deed restriction covenant, ability to use electronic means for voting on stuff like that, because we have the technology now. That's important so that if we need to have a system-wide vote, we can send the proposal out. Now, there may be some restrictions on what we can or cannot do, but a deed restrictions change to get everybody involved would be an easy way to get an approval on it. So then we just take that paperwork, file it with the county, it goes on the covenant as a modification, and we can press on from there. If you all, and anybody you know, they say, well, the deed restrictions are all screwed up, well, then have them look at it and say, and we may come up with a form of say, what section do you want modified to make it current? And here, show us the remedy. How did you write it? Because my pay gets doubled whether I do it or not. And it's nothing. So this stuff is gonna get spread around, but that's a project I think we need to move forward on as a board and as a community to get the deed restrictions refreshed so they make sense. Does anybody have any consternation about that? I mean, it takes a 70% vote of everybody to approve a change. But that just goes to the county, and some of the residuals trash that we have on our files from animal lawsuits or whatever, if we change, for example, the deed restrictions concerning animals, which we've got all kinds of domestic animals out there of a variety of flavors now, we could modify that to accommodate that, which I don't have a problem with at all. But, you know, people have concerns on that, we could structure it so that they're in compliance with deed restrictions, it's refreshed, and move it forward. That would null and void any decision that was made in the past by a judge that doesn't understand what domestic animals are. And they looked at me and said, well, I said, that's stupid. And then, well, the judge was pretty arrogant in those days, and he said, well, if you don't like it, appeal it. Well, I was satisfied with the judgment for me, but I was looking at everybody else out there, and it wasn't fair to everybody else, but it wasn't, but what, nobody else seemed to care. There was apathy, so I said, okay, until somebody decides to make this change, why should I go through all the work to do that? So, anyway, those are some of the previous challenges I've been through here, so.
Well, it ought to be up to we could start it with something simple,
Like the fuel.
like the fuel. That, I mean, that's a
And I think-
homeowner's responsibility between them and their insurance company, and if they wanna keep 200 gallons of fuel in their hangar, whether it be an airplane fuel tank, tractor fuel tanks, car fuel tanks, ATV fuel tanks, or
Yeah,
55-gallon drum, that's their business.
we might have to address, if somebody has a 500-gallon tank, you know, outside their buildings, where to put it, or what it's gotta look like, I don't know. That might be a concern.
We could change it to within their hangar right now.
Yeah, but, well, again, that's between them and their insurance company, they have to put a 500-gallon tank.
We did 500-gallon tanks at Wolf, but we required them to be inside the hangar, and we also required them to have flash arresters, ground, and they had to meet all kinds of specs. But, you know, I guess on the 5-gallon, was that intentionally meant as total of 5 gallons? I mean, my
was a-
T6 holds 160
Well, and
gallons.
the interesting thing about that, you're right.
I've got over
and
500 in cars and airplanes.
I know, the interesting thing about the way that was written was that they didn't consider that to be a threat, they considered a 5-gallon can of gas to
The
be a
can,
threat.
yeah.
So, it's no different than storage of 55-gallon drums of fuel, and how you do that, and that's common everywhere else in the world, except by these deed restrictions. And Jim copied and pasted a lot of that stuff from other deed restrictions, and it needs to be updated. Two other quick forms before we're out of time. We're still good so far. There is a Waverly Acres Homeowner Association covenant not to sue liability release assumption of risk, which has to do with airplanes. Anybody that operates, probably everybody that operates out of the airport should file one of these. And if you go onto the website, there's a list of N numbers in airplanes that I sent this in. And basically it protects the homeowners association from somebody saying, well, you know, I went off the runway and I crashed into this, I'm gonna sue whoever. It protects the homeowners association from being liable, sue, assumption of risk. So it's an assumption of risk, which a private airport is, you take off and land at your own risk, period. If you determine that the runway's not safe, you don't take off on it. But you can't blame or try to sue the HOA for it. So there's a list, a number of people have already filled these out. I don't know if very many people realize this even exists, but it's probably something we need to circulate and have
I
everybody
don't,
sign.
but if you got a spare one, I think I better get it before.
Is it
somebody
under
takes
form?
the wins
On
my
our
side.
HOA?
And then the other one I found that I thought was, if you're having work done on your lot, there's a subcontractor release and waiver of liability form. And if you're having somebody do that, there's a lot of good stuff in here that will protect you as a homeowner when they're doing work on your property, such as if they sign this, they can't sue you when they fall off the ladder and break their arm and leg. So whether that would be fully applicable, what, you know, they'd probably, if they took you to court, they'd probably try to determine fault, but if you have this in your hand, it releases you of any liability on a number of things in here, such as waiver release, insurance, medical treatment, assumption of risk, and other than the subcontractor. It goes through the legalese of doing that. So that's a protective document for each individual homeowner that if they didn't even know was there, would be something you might want to, as some subcontractors come in and do work, say, we need to have you sign this, and see if they would. Because they have insurance to protect themselves as well as you have homeowners insurance to protect yourself. But this is just a little added extra that I think would be a good thing to think about. Gosh, I think my memory's blurry right now, so I think.
Just need to be signed.
Motion to adjourn?
No, just, since I filled it out, somebody else, and basically, you
Yeah.
wanna say board action, we're gonna send out, concern letters to the.
Motion to adjourn?
I have on the floor a motion to adjourn, and yes, do I hear a second?
Second.
Jay Adams, second, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.